When life throws you a curveball, how are you going to handle adversity? Welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast, where you're about to go on a journey as I interview security, business, and entertainment leaders on what it takes to stay fearless. I'm your host, Mark Ledlow, and enjoy today's episode. Hey, folks, welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast. I'm doing jumping jacks. I'm having Marine Corps flashbacks, actually. I'm just PTing myself before the show even starts to get the endorphins kicking, and Tim's over there just going, what the heck am I getting myself into over here? This guy's crazy. But
hey, you're just much more invested than I am.
Got a small sweat equity going on over here. But yeah, it's been a while. Took about 5 weeks off from my studio here in Oregon, and just checked out and did some stuff in studio with some new guests coming up in the lineup. And if you guys don't know who Tim is, Tim's a big shot in the tech space, former tech space in the Bay Area. And not only just a big shot, he's, what I like about Tim, he's so freaking down to earth and real. He's a big partner in the kindness games with Lee over there in Mexico. Yeah. And they started a thing called the kindness games, and it was different. It was just different, making people feel good. And hey, let's have fun with security. It doesn't have to be boring and alpha personality all the time. And I'm just like, yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I mean, the interesting thing about the security industry is you have a lot of people who want to do really good, important work. And that is awesome. I think that's why a lot of people get drawn to the industry. I think it's why a lot of people stay. But there is the like singular profile of this is what a security person should look like if you're a good one. And here's what they should sound like and act like. And if you're a leader, then you're going to be like that. And if you're not a leader, then be the gray man. Nobody should know you're there. And I think they come from a lot of really good lessons about how to be, especially in executive protection, right? Be the gray man. Like, you can't be the center of attention when you're around the principals. If you're doing advanced work, you don't want to draw attention, like all of these things. But I think it gets taken too far, and we start to deny that life is a really long time to be serious, and we can have fun while we're doing really serious work and producing really good outcomes. And then when COVID happened, it was just a crazy time. Everybody got sent home. I was still doing some travel because I was working around executives. There are a lot of people doing some travel still. But it just turned into a lonely, secluded time. I mean, even if we were with people, we had to be apart. It's like, hey, everybody go back to their rooms. We don't want to get each other sick. And that's really how the kindness games came about, is really through like my personal struggle during that time and recognizing that other people were probably having a similar struggle. So,
wow, that's powerful. So you identified what the industry is going through, mental health, depression. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Everybody's thinking the same thing, but they're afraid of how they be perceived coming across in the public audience. And, oh, you're weak. But why not? Let's be real. And then boom, kindness games with you and Lee, and you guys started having fun and being goofy and silly and doing your funny things over there. And people are like, what are they doing over there? That was kind of attractive. Not repelling, but attractive.
For people that know me, I've always been goofy and silly. Even when I've been told like, that's not how we are, I was just like, yeah, but I don't really like hanging out in the gym. It's a lot of work. I don't like getting hot and staying hot. Like, I spent a lot of time in Iraq, and I realized I don't like to sweat indoors anymore. I don't like to drink that much water either, because I just drink a lot of water in my day. And I just like to be relaxed and enjoy the ride. I mean, we get to be around interesting people doing interesting work, and the camaraderie that's available with some of the people and personalities that we have on our teams is amazing. And I think it's okay. I think it's okay to enjoy it.
It is okay. You got to live in the moment.
Yeah, man.
And I think people get so worried about what's my next gig going to be like, or what's my next EP detail going to look like. Live in the moment. Enjoy what you have now. Don't sweat it. Don't sweat the things you can't control.
Mm. You know, I mean, you said something there, right? So I'm not really in executive protection anymore. I started there, but I've definitely moved into security management, risk management, all of these things. But I still deal with it every now and again. But when you're trying to make a career, and you know this, a career in EP, like what does that look like? Especially for a young person, right? They're like, oh, I'm going to have to hustle. Because if I do the math right, if I can work 2 weeks out of every month, like I can make it. But those 2 weeks that I'm working, I can't really get the word out and look for contracts. And so it's this hustle and flow. And like full-time gigs are hard to come by.
Especially now.
People don't get off of them.
No, they don't.
And then, you know, do I fit in with the client? Am I what the team wants? It's a real emotional and mental struggle. And, you know, the interesting thing is there were so many times that I walked into a team room and met everybody. And within a few days, people were like, not what I expected, which, you know what? I'm cool with it. I am who I am. But my overarching goal, I was like, how am I going to make this a career? And so my North Star was, I want to get to the point where I don't look for work anymore. Work looks for me.
Wow. That's huge.
And how do I arrive there? And it occurred to me that if everybody enjoyed working with me, not like me, you can never get everybody to like you. That's really not a good goal. But if everybody enjoyed working with you, they may not want to hang out with you afterwards. You may never get invited to the barbecue, but the experience of working with you is joyful. You will be invited places.
Interesting. So well said, because you make that emotional connection. That's the key. Emotional connection to your tribe.
Absolutely.
Creates the buy-in.
You know, and it's a goal that can be measured, right? You can ask people about it. Well, how would it be easier to work with me, more enjoyable, etc. You can gauge it by feedback. And I think, you know, because a lot of people are like, I need to be the best advanced guy, the best shooter, the best whatever. And you may or may never get there.
True.
I mean, there's limits, right? But you can be a good person to work with. And I think that will help a lot of young people looking to establish this as a career. I think that's a decent North Star.
That's good advice for the young folks listening to this. We have a lot of folks getting on the military that listen to this podcast that are global. Yeah. And we have all the law enforcement folks getting out of law enforcement. I want to be an EP bodyguard. And I would say my recommendation is go corporate. The celebrity world will beat you up. They'll chew you up and spit you out. But the corporate is more, I found to be more consistent.
Yeah.
But right now, you know, as everybody's aware of listening to this podcast, there's been hundreds of thousands of people laid off in the Silicon Valley in the last 8 months. Everybody's getting hacked. I've been talking to some good friends of my colleagues in the industry that I looked up to that are mentors. They're saying, yeah, the chief security officers are even losing their positions because everybody's cutting budgets everywhere right now.
I got laid off.
Yeah, that's right. You were at work. Yeah. Can you say?
Yeah, I was at Meta, Facebook,
and they gave you the cut too with the axe, huh?
It did, but you know, like it was a good run. It was almost 10 years.
That is a long, good run.
Like,
wow,
that's a long run to stay at a tech company.
Very long. Wow.
Yeah.
He did some stuff over there too. I mean, here you are, military background, been in the sandbox in the Middle East, and you did your thing in the military, and then boom, you transitioned from the military into Meta, worked with the top executives over at Meta, I'm sure.
Yeah.
he can say their names and people know who they are. But you did some stuff in leadership position, and then you got cut, and now you're at Kroll. Holy crap! Biggest consulting firm in the world.
It's crazy, right?
Who would have guessed that would happen? That's awesome.
Would it be worthwhile to quickly tell like the 3-minute story of like my career evolution for anybody that's unaware?
Oh, they would love to hear that.
All right. So in second grade, I told my mom I was dropping out of school, and she laughed at me, but I was serious. And the only reason I graduated high school is because the Army recruiter told me I had to. If I was going to join the Army. Yeah.
Wow.
Because I was bored, man. School is a drag. And wasn't really a meaningful experience for me. Although the interesting thing is I really love learning, just not in a classroom environment. So I joined the National Guard while I was still in school, went to basic training between my junior and senior year. After I graduated, went to AIT, Fort Sam, Houston, became an Army medic, and started working in hospitals, started working on ambulances, doing that thing. In early 2003, we got called up for duty. We did the invasion of Iraq. That was fun, like the funnest thing I'd ever done. And the uninitiated kind of look at me like I'm crazy. Like the Silicon Valley people are like, what?
This is odd. You had a blast.
It was awesome. We were there for a year. We tried to go home. We packed up our Connex boxes, did everything. But they said, no, you got to stay. And they sent us to this cozy place called Abu Ghraib prison. They told us there was a unit there who was having issues and they need to go somewhere else. We didn't know they were going to their court-martial investigation for torturing prisoners.
Whoa.
And that was the first time this kid from the cornfield of Illinois was around people every day who I'd only ever seen on TV. Government officials, reporters, and I was like, what the heck? So went home after that, spent 3 months there at Abu Ghraib prison, and went home, and the ambulance was boring, and life was a lot more boring. Then somebody told me, you should do executive protection. You're a paramedic. You've been overseas. It makes sense. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know anybody that does that, but it does sound interesting. So went to ESI, did their 2-week internship, did my distance ed, got my CPS. And in 2007, I was back overseas as a high threat contractor. Did that for 3 years. Came home for Christmas in 2010 and started networking out in the Washington, D.C. area because a buddy that I had helped get into contracting, I went to ESI with, networking. He was out there and he's like, look, you got to take these classes. I'll set you up with introductions. And so I did 2 weeks of classes to get all of my PPS certs out there in Virginia. And then while I was out there, met a bunch of people and ended up getting hired onto a team about 2 weeks after I got home. So then I moved out there. And unbeknownst to me at the time, I was going to be working with the son of the King of Saudi Arabia and his family, which was crazy. It was a lot of fun. That year, the Iranians tried to assassinate the Saudi ambassador to the U.S.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
Made life a little more interesting around there. And then I had a buddy I worked with overseas on contract call me up. He said, hey, you should get out to the D.C. area. Have the easiest job ever. I was like, okay, what's going on? He's like, we're teaching diplomats at the State Department how to not do dumb things, how to not get themselves killed. We teach classes for like 2 days. And then on day 3, we put them through exercises and we blow them up and shoot at them. And we teach them like what it's like to get manhandled by PSD guys. I was like, that does sound fun.
Holy crap. Sign me up.
Right? And then every Friday night we leave work, clean up, and go have wings with the team. Like, perfect.
Wings with the
Let's
team.
do that.
A party.
So I did do that. 3 months after I got there, this little thing called Benghazi happened. And during the congressional review, the Accountability and Review Board on Benghazi, they said there's 7 dudes teaching diplomats how to not get killed. And so we got grabbed. A lot of people at the training center got grabbed, but our team specifically got grabbed
Yeah.
to redo training according to the white paper that Congress was going to release to the public. And there was all of these remediations for diplomatic training for diplomats. And they said, design a program that meets 95% of these criteria. And so we did. I actually got to design the embassy overrun scenario, which was interesting, except everybody lives this time. And then we ended up on the news. Reporters were coming through, and we had to like take them through the training. You know, the big thing. We're part of the PR push to kind of make the public feel better about Benghazi. And then a buddy called me up and said, "Hey, you ever thought about working at Facebook?" And I said, "No."
Wow, what a ride!
Are they even a company? Like, I know there's like an app. And
wow.
So he got me in touch with Brian Jansen. Good dude. If you don't know Brian, love that guy. And then 2013, I went out to California on contract with AS Solution, and we started redesigning Mark's executive protection program. And the following year, we did we designed Cheryl's program, and I designed residential security there. I started their security technology research and development lab. And then for like the last 6 or 7 years there, I was doing anti-eavesdropping, anti-corporate espionage globally. So basically, if you're going to steal our information and not hack through the firewall, that was kind of within the scope of my team, which was super interesting.
That is wild. Techie, engineering, firewall stuff. Whoa, that's crazy.
All sorts of stuff.
You've done a lot of everything.
Yeah. And did you notice that it was always a buddy calling me up?
Your network.
Bring me to the next place.
Your network is so powerful. Yep. So powerful.
Yep.
Would you say LinkedIn is a stronger tool than the human trust and loyalty that you have through your network before you had Meta, Facebook? Or was it the network that people knew you, trust you, what you could do just word of mouth?
I've never actually been a social media guy, which is weird. Before COVID, there was no videos of Tim out there on the internet. I spoke at conferences. But it was always in person, and maybe you would catch a snippet that a conference posted.
Sure.
But I wasn't into the podcasting thing. Wasn't really doing that before COVID. And the reason I started is because we saw that gap. The conferences got canceled.
Right.
And the industry, to be honest, just started to stagnate. It kind of just sit still, and people were just like, "Oh, I wonder what's going to happen." And there was nobody having the conversations that needed to be had to push things forward. And so me and a group of people led by Lady Brittany Golly, we call ourselves GSD, Getting Security Done. We started doing podcasts. That's how I met Lee, actually.
So
he
cool.
He joined the group. And and we started giving people some thoughts, some things to think about during COVID. It was awesome. So, you have to have the personal relationships with people. Mm-hmm. But LinkedIn makes it so much easier to meet people.
Absolutely.
And to keep in contact with them. And now that we have, Zoom and Teams and whatever, it's just easy to meet people on LinkedIn and then have a really substantive conversation with them. And so I think you have to do both. To be successful in this industry, the security industry, you have to have a good LinkedIn game, and you have to have a good in-person game. And both of that requires thoughtfulness.
Soft skill.
Yeah.
Get out of your own way type of thing. Get out there and go to a conference, shake some hands.
Yeah.
It's not really your resume that's getting their attention. It's going to be you, the individual, that gets that person's attention. Everybody's been on a shooting range. Most people have been law enforcement. They can shoot. Everybody knows that. Are you likable?
Are you likable? That is a good one. What about, can you have a conversation?
Or hold it and talk about something of substance matter.
Right. Like, one of the things I used to do when I was interviewing people to join my team is early on in the interview, we would ask them, like the HR questions, like, tell me something you're passionate about, stuff like that. But we would take notes
Mm-hmm.
And then towards the end of the interview, we'd say like, okay, here's the thing. You said that you were passionate about this thing. So we're going to go get something to drink. Do you need water? Take 2 minutes, put yourself together. When we get back, you have a 5-minute presentation to give on this thing that you're passionate about, which should be easy if you're actually like passionate and into something. But the interesting thing is that really overwhelms a lot of people. Some people it breaks. They're just like, I can't do that. And you know, why did we do that? Was it a hazing thing? Well, no, we were in an environment to where you could be working, you could be managing a team, you could be doing a thing. And all of a sudden, an executive you see on TV walks into the room. He's like, hey, what are you doing here? Tell me about what's going on. You have to hold that conversation and tell them something meaningful, or what's going to happen. Who knows?
Do you have a personality?
Yeah.
You're in a car or you get off a jet, for example, and the principal gets off the jet with you and goes, hey, did you see that latest release on CNBC on the stock holding drop? What do you think's going on? Well, I'm a body EP agent. I work out in the gym. I really don't know. Bad answer.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you know, not only do you have a personality, do you know when it's the right time to put it out there, right? I mean, I have a
awareness.
Personality. Exactly. But there's times when it's like, you know what? Now is probably not the time to throw out a Taylor Swift joke, even though they are hilarious.
That is so funny. I didn't see that coming. That's a good curveball. I think it was the upper. Maybe that was a curveball slider. I don't know. That was great. But I think the agents out there. I knew this was going to happen. I knew after we got out of COVID and we froze for 2 years, we have a new generation of agents coming into the industry that wouldn't know what to do. You know, you have royals come in. I had a lot of, expensive like yourself being around the royals, and they come in the country. They need protection. Well, you might be working with them, but they think they're in the Sharia law world, in their culture. And so what you're used to in America, you get in their circles, you may last a week and you're done. You said something that disrespected them, even though you didn't think you did anything wrong, you're done. Yeah. And you looked at the lady wrong. You shook the guy's hand when he didn't want to be. He invited you over for a meal and you said, no, I'm not hungry. You disrespected his offer of food in Middle Eastern cultures. That's a big no-no.
Why do you think new people coming into the industry don't know how to do it, what to do?
I think what they're seeing on social media, they're trading the schools is good information to get on the hard skill side, but the real nitty gritty stuff that you have to know about is not being taught. The stuff that you and I spent 20 years finding out by failure and failing and getting back up. I just don't think they just don't know what they don't know.
Interesting. Do you think there's a shortage of mentors?
Absolutely.
Really?
I think there's a shortage of mentors offering the right information to the agents, the correct information. There's a lot of information out there, but some information may not be applicable to the corporate world at different schools. Some information may be applicable for the corporate environment, not the Middle Eastern culture or celebrity culture. I mean, there's so many different industries we're working in executive protection. You can't apply the same concept to all the same industries. They don't work.
Situational awareness.
Absolutely. You get around a celebrity. Well, that celebrity has a circle around them that protects them. You have the chief of staff, and then you have the executive assistants, and then you have all the power players trying to get that power. If you're working with that principal, guess what their job is to do? Screen you and block you out because they don't know you yet.
Interesting.
But you don't know that. AEP school, they don't teach you that.
Yeah. I think there's probably a strong urge to overcompensate. If you are lacking experience, you don't want to look like you're lacking experience because it's a tough industry out there. There's a lot of competition, right?
Fierce. It's fierce right now.
And so are people really just overcompensating and trying to be the guy way harder than they need to?
Yeah, they're overworking. They're overdoing it. And the principal and the staff are watching and noticing like, that was awkward. That was weird. It's just not the right fit. That guy's too quiet or he's too talkative. I've heard that. The guy's talks too much. He's telling me his life story about his ex-girlfriend, mama drama. We don't want to hear about it in the corporate office. Dude, keep your mouth shut. It's not the right situational awareness.
You know, and the thing is, on one front, you'd think it would be easy to look around and see what other people are doing and kind of assimilate a little bit. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, I think something in the industry that doesn't get talked about at all, outside of the kindness games, is imposter syndrome.
Oh, wow. That is good.
I mean, think about this, right? I told you my story, and there's a lot of people that'd be like, dang, that's like a pretty good story. That's a pretty good career story for a completely unintentional career. Like, I just got invited to different places, right? But coming out of all that time in Iraq, State Department, you'd think I'd have like a decent level of like confidence, understanding of who I am. But when I got to Facebook, I had anxiety that robbed me of my sleep. I would go to meetings that were supposed to be security meetings, and they'd be talking about like Port 97 and whatever. And I'd be like, do we have a ship somewhere? What are you guys talking about? And everybody would kind of look at me like, this is security. I was like, I feel like I'm going to get fired.
Whoa. Wow.
And the interesting thing is I had like one of the best mentors ever, Brian Jansen. I sat next to him for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And he poured into me, which I'm thankful for. I would not be the person I am today without Brian and Christian West. But also I realized that I did not know what I needed to know to be successful in that job. And so I started asking people that knew. So engineers, like, hey, dude, this was supposed to be a security meeting about a program that I'm supposed to be running. I have no idea what you guys are talking about. I just got to be honest. Like, there is no way that I can bring my stakeholders to a responsible decision based on my understanding of this. Can you help me? And I found people who were willing to say like, yeah, absolutely. Let me help you understand how this works and how it impacts you. Right. Because the technology around things, I was getting into residential security, like, protect a house. Well, when you run that entire house from an iPad.
Wow.
What?
Yeah. Holy cow. Crazy.
I mean, it's different. And so I actually adopted the mantra that I actually still have until this day, is that I actually know, I'm highly confident that I am the dumbest person in this room.
Imposter syndrome sets in.
Yeah. But I need all of you to help me with this project, this program, whatever we're building together, because I physically cannot do it. I don't have the tools, the knowledge, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I found that when you relinquish your ego and your need to be in charge, like, people love being able to create in their role. You get smart people who love what they do, and you give them the freedom to say, hey, here is the problem. This is why it's a problem. Here's who it's a problem for. And this is what we think success looks like right now. How do we get there? And then you just sit back and listen. People love working for that leader.
Interesting. Wow. So true. Because I know running my own business, that's what I learned that from the military. Delegation.
Yeah.
I'm not a numbers guy. I told this to Mike Howard earlier today on his show. I'm not a numbers guy, and I know that. Google Sheets is confusing to me. But I have people that know that stuff, like they master it.
That's
Michelle, she's a genius when it comes to that. And I had my vendor call me and say, hey, yeah, I had Michelle help me with my invoice because I was up a couple bucks. I'm like, seriously? But let them run. Let them run. Let Mark Beeson run. He's my chief operating officer. Let them run and make those calls and just staff, do what they do. Give them the power. Just sit back, get out of their way, and let them run. You'll be amazed at what your team will do for you if you let them. Quit trying to control everything.
Stop trying to control everything. So here's the thing, right? We have an issue with leadership in our industry, the security industry at large, not just executive protection, but largely I'm outside of executive protection. It falls within responsibility I have sometimes, but I'm no longer an agent. Will never again be an agent. And I'm not going to manage EP programs either. It's just, it's not my focus portfolio. But within the security industry, we have a huge leadership deficit. And I think it's because there's a misunderstanding of what leadership actually is. And there is a very difficult transition from military, law enforcement, EMS, feds, to the corporate side, the private side, where you have organizations that are fundamentally structured differently with goals that have nothing to do with revenue. They are enshrined in law. They will exist. You will always have police, even if they're defunded. You will always have the FBI, even if they're defunded. You're always going to have EMS, even if you have to volunteer to get people to do it. I mean, think about it. These things will exist because they are functions of law. They do not create revenue. Mm-hmm. And you take a leadership mindset that you're taught in these environments. That is literally the mindset of how do we efficiently lead people into conflict? Think about it. We lead people into conflict, and you take it to an organization that is fundamentally different. It is value and revenue driven.
Two different missions.
Absolutely. And all we know how to do is lead into conflict. So we end up creating conflict.